Chapter 31. The Eskimos of the North. Tradition says that the Eskimos of Greenland and Alaska have their origin in distant Thule, or Thule. It is said that the Eskimos are mixed with invaders from Polynesia, Tunguska, and Dene. The great Gnostic Rosicrucian master Arnold Heller, speaks sublimely about distant Thule, the sacred island. Don Mario Rosso de Luna says that this island still exists, but is found in a state of jinn. We know that the first human race existed on this island. The polar race developed in an environment totally different from the present one. In that age, which dates back more than 300 million years, the Earth was really a semi-etheric, semi-physical. It was an ocean, curved, blue as the night firmament. In those times, human beings could float in the atmosphere. Human bodies were androgynous and ethereal. These bodies were elastic and subtle. Just as they could maintain their gigantic form, 10 or 20 meters tall, they could reduce their size at will and assume pygmy-like stature, or take the size of the present human body. We cannot affirm that those people were hermaphroditic. This race was androgynous. The sexual energy operated in a different way, and they reproduced through the fissiparous sexual act. In a determined instant, the original organism divided into exact halves. This is similar to multiplication by cellular division. Each time this occurred, there was prayer and profound veneration of the divine. Although it may seem incredible, the first human race reached a very high degree of civilization. With the plastic and ethereal matter of this primeval earth, houses were built, palaces, cities, and grandiose temples. Naturally, the pigs of today's materialism will laugh at our affirmations because they have never found the remains of this civilization. It is impossible to find the remains of such an ancient civilization because in that age the earth was ethereal, that is to say, it was made of pro-matter. Only in the memories of nature can the great clairvoyants find all the living history of the first race. This is the protoplasmic race. This is the legitimate protoplasm of the human race. The great clairvoyants can laugh all they want at the Darwinian and Haeckellian protoplasm. The fossil remains of human beings found in the subterranean caverns of the earth have nothing to do with the protoplasmic race. These remains are those of degenerated tribes, descendants of the submerged Atlantis. Religion, science, and philosophy were totally united in the culture of the polar race. The inhabitants of distant Thule were bodhisattvas of the masters of other Mahamanvantaras. Adam and Eve were one single being. Nowadays, Adam and Eve are separated and suffer and search for each other with an insatiable thirst to unite. Only during the sexual act are the man and woman one single being. In those moments of sexual voluptuousness, both man and woman have the immense joy of being one single being. The cosmic rituals of that age are very interesting. In the temples, the trained clairvoyant can discover pure occult masonry. Nevertheless, those rituals differed so greatly from those that currently exist in the world that it would be impossible for the modern Mason to admit that these rituals were Masonic. The lights of the temple were not fixed. No sooner had the venerable master occupied a throne that he would abandon it. Sometimes the first vigilant occupied a throne, to later change it for that of the second vigilant. The high dignitaries levitated to exchange among themselves their ceremonial positions. On their vestments, the colors black and white were combined to represent the struggle between spirit and matter. The construction of the temple was perfect. The symbols and the tools of work were used inverted to represent the drama that is projected into the centuries. Thus, we may contemplate with surprise the inverted scepters, chalice, etc., all inverted. Life was at this time descending towards matter, and it was necessary then to give symbolic expression to this. The sacred processions were grandiose. They made the great mysteries and the supreme descent of spirit towards matter understandable. This was a magnificent event that was awaited through the course of the centuries. It was awaited with as much yearning as is today the return of man to the superior worlds. The language of the protoplasmic race was the word of gold, a universal and cosmic language whose combinations of sound produce cosmic phenomena of all kinds. Those who follow the path of the perfect matrimony rediscover the primeval language within themselves. When the sacred fire reaches the level of the throat, we begin to speak in the very pure orthoepy of the divine language which, like a river of gold, flows delightfully beneath the dense forest of the sun. Singing in this language, the parents of the gods taught the gods the cosmic laws of nature. The script of the first race was the runes. The mallet of masonry comes from the arrow of the Egyptian god Ra, and this is a rune. In that epoch, the rituals of the polar temple were all runic. The movements of the officials were runic. This is the divine script. Let us remember that the swastika is a rune. The Hebrew letters are nothing other than modifications of runic letters. The cradle of occult wisdom was not Asia, as many believe. The true cradle of occult wisdom was the sacred island, distant Thule, about which Weor said so many beautiful things. In the epoch of the protoplasmic race, the sacred isle was not in the north. That island was in fact a continent positioned exactly on the equilateral line. Much later, with the revolution of the axis of the Earth, this island came to be in the north. The revolution of the Earth's axis has already been demonstrated by contemporary science. Nowadays, the poles are deviating toward the equator. The present Eskimos, although mixed with other races, are not descendants of the first race. Rather, they are degenerated Atlanteans, but they maintain some very interesting traditions. These people have a family bond that unites them. Each patriarch uses a special amulet consisting of a sign, totem mark, or the name of a species of sacred animal, which he passes on to his descendants. Because they live in the North Pole, many thinkers may feel inclined to believe that this race could have its origin in the primitive Nordics of the First Age. It is interesting to know that among the ancient Eskimos, there was no special authority, Kekiklu or king. They were ruled by a council of elders. The young males united in perfect matrimony with women of other clans, but the amulet served as a distinguishing sign to avoid marriages among relatives. In other times, polyandry existed. They killed every female child that was born before the male son. Fortunately, they have now abandoned that barbaric custom. In his book entitled History of Matrimony, R. Westermark says that the Eskimos lent their wife to another man or exchanged her. In fact, this is an adulterous custom. a horrible custom incompatible with the doctrine preached by our adorable Savior, Jesus the Christ. But every rule has its exception, and we cannot believe that all Eskimos have the same barbaric custom. There is everything in the garden of the Lord. It is a custom for the Eskimos to wrap their dead in skins and to bury them beneath a tumulus surrounded by a fence. In the Aleutian Islands, they were tied with cords and buried in the crevices of cliffs. The Eskimos know the law of eternal return. They know that the ego returns to a new womb. The fetishes, or diminutive dolls of the Eskimos, symbolize the essence. They believe that the essence is tiny and diminutive, but the priests do not ignore that the soul is fabricated with it. Pregnancy, the birth of children, puberty, and death are celebrated with special esoteric practices. The Eskimos adore the feminine principle of God. They love their sublime elder, Sedna, who lives in the depths of the ocean and sends marine animals for their nourishment. Naturally, the erudite ignoramuses who know nothing about occult science laugh at the divine religion of the Eskimos. The best canticles and rituals of the Eskimos are for the Divine Mother. The symbolic journeys of the shaman priest in search of the ancient Sedna to console her when she becomes angered, and the processions that the community makes to reconcile her remind us of the symbolic journeys of the Masonic candidate around the lodge. The journeys are the external symbols of the elevation of the candidate's consciousness through the superior worlds. The 5 symbolic journeys of occult masonry are intimately related with the 5 initiations of major mysteries. When they see these journeys of the Eskimos, they profane and ignored the profane and ignorant do nothing but laugh and laugh at what they do not know. They laugh like idiots. They laugh at what they do not know. The Eskimos know with perfect exactitude, as the true initiate who has awakened his 6th sense also knows, that there exist Jennies, elves, gnomes, giants, salamanders of the fire, undines, etc., etc. Fortunately, official science, after having accepted hypnotism and having baptized it with the new name hypnology, has to accept clairvoyance as a logical consequence. Only in this way is it possible to explain to ourselves that a subject in a hypnotic state can see through a wall or can inform about what is happening, often at a distance of thousands of kilometers. What science rejects today is accepted tomorrow. Today, those people laugh at Paracelsus and the Eskimos because of the elementals, gnomes, the pygmies, the salamanders, the jennies or genies, undines, sylphs, and so on. They will have to laugh at themselves and become red with embarrassment when these creatures are rediscovered by science. Who would have believed only 5 years ago in the glass snake? Now, in 1961, a famous scientist, one of those who previously described himself as incredulous, has just discovered the famous glass snake. This snake has the power to drop its tail at will in cases of danger, easily being able to regenerate it afterwards. When the glass snake finds itself in danger, attacked by some animal, it coils up, becomes rigid, and throws itself over the animal. It then instantly abandons its tail, and its head escapes in a flash. The animal is distracted by the tail while the snake saves itself. Later, a new tail grows from the head. Thus, nature has many marvels, and it is necessary to learn how to respect all religions because they are but forms of a single universal religion. Tremendous truths and cosmic sciences are contained in every religion, unknown to the erudite ignoramuses of this barbaric age. All those who want to profoundly self-realize must work in their laboratory with the sulfur, the fire, the nitrogen of the air, the man, the water, and the bull, the earth. These four elements form a cross. The alchemist who follows the path of the perfect matrimony must transmute the lead into gold within the profound caverns of the great mountain range, the spinal column. In this great mountain range lived the gnomes, the guardians of all the treasures of the earth, the great alchemists who transmute lead into gold. The gnomes work with the salamanders of the fire, with the sylphs of the air, and the voluptuous undines of the pure water of life. The ardent salamanders fertilize the unquiet undines, and the happy and playful sylphs animate the fire of the laboratory's furnace, the chakra called the Church of Ephesus, so that the water, the semen, evaporates from within its container, the sex. The seminal vapors rise through the chimney to the distillery, the brain. There the gnomes perform the great distillation, perfectly transmuting the remaining lead into gold. It is necessary to transmute the lead of the personality into the gold of the spirit. Only in this way can we again speak the very pure orthoepy of the divine language. Our motto is telema, or telema, willpower. We need to pass through the 5 great initiations of fire, symbolized by the 3 degrees of occult masonry. We need to return, to go back to the divine wisdom of distant Thule. Much has been said about this distant Thule, the lands of the gods, the land of the gods. The ancestors of the Eskimos and the Aztecs reside there. Quetzalcoatl lives here. From there he came, and there he will return. The Emperor Montezuma sent a group of ambassador magicians to that mysterious Thule. They went in a state of jinn, that is to say, they traveled within the 4th dimension. Distant Thule is the sacred land, the sacred isle, the first continent to coexist, and the last to cease to exist. That continent is found in the polar ice cap of the north, within the 4th dimension. The Aztec magicians sent by Montezuma arrived there in a state of jinn, carrying presents to the ancestors of the Aztecs. On their return, they brought a message for Montezuma and the Aztecs, which we could synthesize as follows. Quote, "If you do not stop your passions, cruelties, and vices, you will be punished. White men will come from the sea and will conquer you and destroy you." All this was fulfilled by the arrival of the Spanish in Mexico. The matter of the 4th dimension and of a sacred land within the 4th dimension at the North Pole may make the erudite ignoramuses laugh. They in fact have not studied all dimensions of space. It is a shame that mathematics cannot define the dimensions of space. Every mathematical expression always corresponds to a realization of realities. Thus one thinks with formal logic. Fortunately, though, there exists a dialectic language that would permit us to use mathematics to define the 6 fundamental dimensions of the universe. Generally, the dimensions are represented by powers. The 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, etc. It was precisely this that provided a base for Hinton to construct his famous theory of tesseracts, or 4-dimensional solids, erased to the 4th power. This is the representation of dimensions in the form of powers. Many authors consider that mathematics has nothing to do with dimensions because there is no difference between the dimensions. This concept appears false to us. We believe that the difference between dimensions is obvious, and that the entire universe is made according to the law of number, measure, and weight. What happens is that whilst the mind is balled up in the formal logic, we will limit the use of mathematics to the three-dimensional world. We urgently need dialectic logic to be able to consider as something logical the representation of dimensions by powers. This is only possible dialectically with dialectic logic. Metageometry studies superior space. Metageometry is destined to totally replace Euclidean geometry. In fact, Euclidean geometry only serves to investigate the properties of a particular physical space, but wanting to abandon the study of the fourth vertical clearly means that physics will be halted in its progress. The vital secret of all mechanics is found in the fourth coordinate. Metageometry has the merit of considering the three-dimensional world as a section of a superior space. The point of three-dimensional spaces is only a sectional slice of a metageometry line. With formal logic, it is impossible to consider metageometry lines as distances between points in our space, and it is impossible to represent them forming figures in our space. But with dialectic logic, you have distances between points of our space, and we can represent these with figures and qualities. It is not absurd, then, to say that the continent of the North Pole belongs to the fourth dimension. Neither would it be absurd in light of the thought of dialectic logic to affirm that this continent is inhabited by people who have physical bodies. We can make a map of this continent, and this would be accepted by dialectic logic. Formal logic, on the other hand, besides considering our affirmations absurd, would lead us, in fact, into error. The three-dimensionality of the world certainly exists in our psyche, in our receptive apparatus. It is also there where we can find all the marvels of the superdimensional, if we develop clairvoyance, clairaudience, etc. That is to say, if we perfect our psychic apparatus. Only through the development of our powers of internal perception can we study the superior dimension of nature. Materialistic positivism has built a great wall of China around free investigation. Now, the erudite ignoramuses condemn as anti-scientific all which rises contradictory to that wall. Materialistic positivism is conservative and reactionary. We, the Gnostics, are revolutionaries, and we totally reject reactionary and conservative ideas. Immanuel Kant, the great German philosopher, considers space to be a property of the receptivity of the world by our consciousness. He said, "We carry in ourselves the conditions of our space, and therefore within ourselves we will find the conditions that allow us to establish correlations between our space and superior space." When the microscope was invented, the world of the infinity was small. Infinitely small, of the world of the infinitely small was open to us. In the same way, the world of the fourth dimension will be open to us with the awakening of the sixth sense. Those who have developed the sixth sense can study the Akashic records of nature and discover for themselves the reality of the polar continent of the north. The first race that existed in the world was of a black color. This was the protoplasmic race, the androgynous race that reproduced itself through the fissiparous sexual act, similar to multiplication by cellular division. The first race lived in the fourth dimension of space. Earth itself was then submerged within the fourth dimension. That race had a gigantic civilization. The language of gold was spoken, and they wrote with runic letters. These letters are of great esoteric power. In that epoch, the angel Uriel wrote a precious cosmic book with runic letters. We can only study this book in the Akashic records. The manner and representation of the people of the first race was not subjective as is that of humanity today. These polar people had clear and perfect objective representations and perceptions. They could see bodies in a complete and exact manner. The people of today can only see sides, angles, faces, surfaces, etc. Now nobody sees complete bodies. People of today are degenerated and only have incomplete subjective perceptions and representations of a type which is completely degenerate and subjective. We need to return to the point of departure and regenerate our psychic apparatus through sexual magic and internal meditation to reconquer the objective representations and perceptions. It is urgent to eliminate all subjective elements from our representations and perceptions. This is possible by improving the quality of the representations with the technique of meditation and by regenerating the psychic apparatus with sexual magic. In the North, it is the cradle of occult wisdom, and not in the Orient as some occultists suppose. The Eskimos conserve many religions, religious traditions that are worth seriously investigating. Archimedes said, "Give me a point of support and I will move the universe." Archimedes searched for the lever to move the universe. This lever exists. Eliphas Levi says that this lever is the astral light. We prefer to speak more clearly and say that the lever of Archimedes is Kundalini. Whoever develops Kundalini can place his body of flesh and bone into the fourth dimension and transport him or herself to distant Thule, the land of the gods. Whoever knows how to pray and ask Mother Kundalini could well beg her to put him or her in the fourth dimension and transport him or her to the sacred island. Kundalini is the lever of Archimedes, the lever with which we place ourselves in the fourth dimension, traveling with our physical bodies. The invention of the lever immediately differentiated primitive man from the animal, and in fact was linked with the real appearance of concepts. If we understand in depth, technically, physically, the action of the lever, we discover with astonishment that its construction consists of a correct syllogism. Whoever does not know how to construct a syllogism correctly can neither totally understand the action of a lever, or maybe they mean never totally understand, neither totally understand the action of a lever. That should be followed with nor or something, I guess. But it says maybe never totally understand the action of it. The syllogism is the psychic sphere, or in the psychic sphere is literally the same thing as the lever in the physical sphere. In reality, we can be sure that the beings living on Earth are divided into two groups: those who know the action of the lever and those who do not know this action. Man needs the lever of Archimedes, the supra-astral or superastral serpent, to put himself or herself into the fourth dimension and to transform themselves with their body to the land of the gods. When mathematics has renounced the fundamental axioms of identity and difference, the path is found that leads to a superior order of things in the superior dimensions of space. The great writer P.O. said, In the world of the infinite and variable magnitudes, magnitude may not be the same as itself. One part can be equal to the whole, and of two equal magnitudes, one can be infinitely greater than the other. In reality, this can seem a complete absurdity when we study the question in the light of the mathematics of constant and finite numbers. But it is certain, completely certain and true, that the mathematics of constant and infinite numbers is in itself the calculus of the relations that exist between non-existent man, that is, it just says ma, I think it's supposed to say man, that is the calculus of the absurd. Then we can completely affirm that what appears as absurd from the point of view of this mathematics may really be true, even though people do not believe it. On a certain occasion, a famous penologist said, "To discover truth, we have to renounce logic." In part, this lawyer spoke the truth. In another way, he did not. In reality, we have to renounce formal logic, but not logic, because logic is the art of correct thinking. If we stop thinking correctly, clearly we fall into the absurd. In his Critique of Pure Reason, Immanuel Kant showed us the path of a transcendental logic. Before Bacon arrayed the famous Aristotle in the archaic scriptures of the sacred land of the Vedas, formulae for a superior logic were already given. These formulae were written in very ancient books. This logic is dialectic logic. This is intuitive logic. The logic of ecstasy, the logic of the infinite. This logic existed long before deductive or inductive logic was formulated. When man masters this marvelous key of the mind called dialectic logic, he can open the mysterious door of the world of natural causes without danger of falling into error. The axioms of dialectic logic can only be formulated during ecstasy. If we really want to deeply understand the multidimensional world and visit the sacred land of the gods, situated in the northern polar cap, we urgently need to cast everything out from the temple of our mind, all the intellectual idols that have become axioms. We need to liberate the mind, free it from the formal logic, which is only good for Molière and his caricatures. The lands of Jinn, the marvels hidden within the 1,001 nights, the countries of gold where the ineffable gods of the aurora live, become a tremendous reality when we find the lever of Archimedes. Supported by this mysterious lever, we spring to the fourth dimension. The hour has arrived to liberate the mind and to awaken Kundalini. The moment has arrived for the human being to learn to pass to the fourth dimension at will anytime he wishes. If someone who has awakened Kundalini were to supplicate to this Kundalini in the moments when falling asleep, asking to be placed in the fourth dimension and transported to the sacred island of the North Pole, you can be sure, dear reader, that the miracle would inevitably occur. The only thing that the initiate needs is to know, how to raise him or herself from the bed whilst conserving sleep. The snake will help him or her with everything when they, in turn, know how to help themselves. Help yourself and I will help you.